Everybody wants to get united. Like, what we gotta do is meet everybody on 149th Street at the bench.
Graffiti is an art form that focuses a whole bunch on style, so it should come as no surprise that there is a bunch of different ways to do a tag. In today's video, I want to go ahead and share with you guys 5 different types of graffiti hand styles. Now, none of these are objectively better than any of the others on the list, but I'd love to hear from you guys which one you enjoy the most. And I'll also be sharing which ones I enjoy the most. And along the way, when I can, I'm gonna go ahead and throw in a pro and a con for each one of the things on this list. Kicking off the list at number 5, we've got the ultra drippy tags. You know, those tags where every single letter has an absolute mess of drips just pouring out of it. These are probably my least favorite on the list, but the fact that it made the list at all means that I do kind of enjoy them quite a bit. And the reason I like them is because when you use the drips effectively, they add a nice bit of pop to the letters. Not to mention the fact that it ends up taking a lot more space because of the drips, but it's a nice bit of flair to each letter that they're on. The downside though is if you're not really comfortable with drips, if you don't know how to utilize them, or if you just have a very messy marker, then you could end up having a line bleed into other letters and as a result kind of obscuring structures. On the other hand though, something like this isn't too bad, right? You see a lot of drips, you see the drips are intersecting with letters and covering a bunch, but you can still make out the structures. You can still see what is supposed to be written here. Next on the list, we got chisel tip hand styles. And I felt really conflicted about this particular one on the list. I really wanted this one to be higher up, but before we get into that, I gotta ask you guys, I'm looking to start a new series of videos. You guys really seem to enjoy the videos about the graffiti towers that we recently came out with, and I wanted to start a new series of videos sharing your guys' graffiti and your guys' stories while doing graffiti. So if you've got videos of you rocking spots, then feel free to shoot that over to my Instagram or to my email in the description down below. But chisel tip hand styles, I love these. I really do. They're gorgeous. I like the clean, crisp aspect to the letters that you typically find with those chisel tips. The upside to a nice chisel tip tag is you have beautiful flow with the letters that's almost baked directly innate into the actual nib itself. Not only does the wider, broader tip of your nib give you letter uniformity with your flat tops or bottoms and angular line work, but it also gives you a lot of line uniformity. Because you have that more boxed structure, you now have a very definitive left and right side, which can easily line up with line uniformity with other letters. But there's a huge downside with these, and they're often associated with calligraffiti. And the deal with this becomes the fact that calligraphy has an extremely high standard for its fundamentals, and graffiti doesn't have an extremely high standard for its fundamentals. So normally when you get a graffiti artist who's trying to do calligraphy with a bit of a graffiti flair to it, they call it calligraffiti, but they don't abide by any of calligraphy's fundamentals, and even if they do, they don't do it too well, leaving them just really doing poorly done calligraphy. However, when you find somebody that really nails that calligraphy fundamental standard, then you usually just end up with somebody who is doing calligraphy with supplies that are typically used for graffiti. Either way, they're still not really achieving that calligraffiti aspect that they're looking for. But every so often, you have somebody that successfully blends the two art forms, which is not easy to do by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it was very difficult to find a B-roll for this part of the video, specifically because it's so rare to see. So for that reason, it's number 4 on our list. Now check this out. I got a brand new book I just released. It teaches you all graffiti's fundamentals, answers all the common questions in graffiti, like how do I find my style? How do I flow? I don't understand this fundamental or that fundamental. Letter structures are hard. We have stuff in there for people of all skill levels. Even you guys who've been rocking graffiti for the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you're bound to learn something from this book. And for those of you guys who are newer, get out of the toy phase and grab your book today. Got a link in the description. Number 3 on the list, Philly hand styles. Philly hand styles gotta take our number 3 spot. Look, I wanted to put this at number 1 or 2, but I've got 2 other things on this list that I really like. Now just to be clear, there's different types of Philly hand styles, but we're just lumping them all together here in this video. And I mean, they're some of the most iconic hand styles in the world. The upside to a Philly hand style is, well, if you manage to nail the aesthetic, if you actually learn Philly hand styles, then you likely have one of the most stylish tags in your area. I'm assuming that you don't live in PA, because a lot of my viewers don't. But if you live in PA, well then your hand style is just gonna fit with everybody else's, which, good job, that's also a benefit. The downside is if you fail at a Philly hand style, especially in PA, everyone's gonna know. Everyone knows what a Philly hand style is supposed to look like here. Honestly, a worse fate if you fail at a Philly hand style outside of PA and people don't know what a Philly hand style is supposed to look like and nobody's able to tell you and correct you, well then you're gonna have a pretty bad hand style probably for a few years before you realize that your Philly hand style sucks. Number 2 on the list, it's gotta be one-liners. One-liners are, well, I mean, to put it quite frankly, not only are they effective and efficient, but man, are they crisp when they're done well. Oh man, there's nothing that I enjoy, or I mean, there's very few things I enjoy more than seeing somebody's one-liner and trying to follow the line through the tag and see how they did it. That right there, sometimes you see some one-liners that just express the person, the writer's genius with how they organize their line order to achieve the one line. The upside to one-liners is the fact that once again, they're very efficient, and the line order that each letter is done in is organized in such a way in order to make it a smooth transition from one letter to the next, maintaining a sense of flow. The downside to one-liners is oftentimes you can find yourself struggling to not go over letters because you have to double back, so on and so forth, in certain cases. This isn't true of every single name. Another issue is also the fact that if you're newer and you haven't yet learned the fundamentals, you can find yourself not being efficient with your line order, putting things in a weird way, and you can find yourself kind of shoehorning in these hairpin turns and other lines just to force a one-liner that really doesn't need to be there in the first place. And that's really the thing. A one-liner isn't always necessary, and it doesn't always make sense. I gotta throw the bonus. Alright, there was too many different kinds of hairstyles out there to not throw a bonus mention out there. And I gotta say, flare tags. Flare tags are incredible. They're beautiful. They're elegant. They look amazing. I mean, I don't think anybody's gonna refute any of those points. I couldn't tell you why they're so satisfying, but they are. When you use a flare tag and you use it well, use it methodically, you gain access in the ability to really contrast any fundamental in graffiti that you might want to. Maybe you want the tops of your letters to be a lot larger than the bottoms. Alright, well now you can do that with a flare tag. Maybe you want your first letter to be a lot heavier than all your other letters. Pop a flare on it. Maybe you're looking for a calligraphy look, but you only have this one cap. You can use a flare tag to do that. Regardless of what it is you might want to achieve, using flare tags is a very versatile way to mix up your arsenal, and oftentimes a very elegant way as well. And in all honesty, flare tags are a really safe bet to go with because there really isn't much of a downside to trying them. About the 2 most common downsides are going to be either your can kind of spatting out and not really giving you a nice effective flare, and also the flare taking up a little bit more room than you might want it to, so now you don't have room for the rest of your letters. And that's just about the most 2 common things I've seen in a poorly done flare tag. And one last one that comes to mind is when you have an inexperienced graffiti artist using flares, sometimes they'll add either too many to where it doesn't really make sense, or it kind of starts to conflict with letter structures, and that's going to be the biggest drawback. Now for the number 1 spot, I gotta give it to the New York handstyles. New York handstyles have a certain crispness to them. You know the kind of aesthetic I'm talking about. I'm talking about the nice slight lean to the left with the nice broad chisel tip, and each letter is perfectly spaced. The fundamentals are just on point with New York handstyles, and it's no surprise. You really don't get more textbook graffiti than out of New York. The downside is if you're looking for something more stylish, then this may not cut it. Certainly, New York styles can get stylish, no doubt about that. Their loss, alright? I'ma just say it. That's on you. Your loss. The upside is it's the New York style. It's the cleanest style out there. Once again, that's heavily based on my own personal opinion. You gotta forgive me on that. But in the comments down below, let me know your favorite styles in graffiti. There is a bunch more out there. And before we hop on out of here, don't forget, we're trying to start a new series here on the channel where we show you guys rockin' spots. And we share your stories. So if you want to submit for that, just shoot your videos over on Instagram or in the email, got it linked in the description. And also, if you want to learn all of graffiti's fundamentals and you really want to up your game in this art form, check out our brand new How to Do Graffiti guidebook. It's a comprehensive guide on graffiti, teaches you everything you have to know, answers all your questions. I'm not even kidding you. You guys have been loving the books to the point where it's been a little bit life-changing in all honesty. So get out of the toy phase, head out to the description and pick up a book, and I'll catch you guys back here next week. Thanks for watching.